is OTR-FM, part of the ION Radio Network.
It's the day after the Iowa caucus, Tuesday, February 2nd, 2016, 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. From the Uptown Auto Repair Studio, Matt Connarton Unleashed starts right now.
Auto sequence starts. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome. Happy after caucus day. It's Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live tonight on IPM Nation and OTR FM. Of course, Unleashed is 5 nights a week on the IPM Nation live station channel 1. And Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we are also carried on OTR FM, the premium channel on the OMTImes radio network. So wonderful to have you with me. Of course, we do broadcast live from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire, broadcasting to the world. And, of course, the live station on IPM Nation is powered by Ambit Energy. You can learn how to save quite a bit on your energy bill. Go right now. Actually, don't go yet. Wait till after the show. I don't want you to be distracted, or maybe during the break. But go to ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. That's ipmnation.ambitrabbit.com. Find out how you can save, and you will be very glad you did. And I can testify for you personally that it's really a legitimate way to save quite a bit of money, and we can all stand to save money. That's for sure. So welcome tonight. Of course, it is the aftermath, the day after the Iowa caucus, and I don't know. I can't honestly say that any big surprises. I mean, I predicted it was going to be Trump and Hillary, but I was certainly open to the possibility that it would be Cruz on the Republican side, because polls showed him to be, he and Trump were kind of trading places back and forth in terms of the top spot in the polls. So not a huge surprise. And of course, I thought it could go either way on the Democratic side, and it was about as close. Well, it basically was a statistical tie, but Hillary came out on top barely, sort of. We'll get into that a little bit more too. So there's a lot to dissect here. If you'd like to join the conversation tonight, you can. We do have an open phone line, 617-917-4IPM. That's IPM as in IPM Nation, 617-917-4IPM, or if you prefer 4476, you can call or you can send us a text at that number, 617-917-4476. And, of course, we do have the chat room at ipmnation.com/live1. We've got the chat there that you can enter. We've got, of course, Facebook, the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. You can post there during the show or anytime, or tweet me at Matt Connarton. So there's a multitude of ways you can communicate. Boy, I almost don't know where to start. Let's start with this. So I'm going to play for you, if you didn't hear it, because a lot of people have been talking about this today. Trump's concession speech from last night. Donald Trump coming in second. It's only a couple minutes long. He didn't give a big long speech. It's not like these campaign rallies where he'll just speak for. I think there was one where he spoke for like 2.5 hours. This was a couple months ago. The one where he infamously mocked Ben Carson, stabbing somebody in the belt buckle. But let me. This is only a couple minutes long, so let me play this, and then the couple things in Trump's concession speech from last night in Iowa that I want to comment on. So take a listen to this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I love you people. I love you people. Thank you.
He loves you. He loves you, Iowa.
Unbelievable. I have to start by saying I absolutely love the people of Iowa. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
They didn't love you as much as they love Cruz, but that's all right.
So on June 16th, when we started this journey, there were 17 candidates. I was told by everybody, do not go to Iowa. You could never finish even in the top 10. And I said, but I have friends in Iowa. I know a lot of people in Iowa. I think they'll really like me. Let's give it a shot. They said, don't do it. I said, I have to do it. And we finished second. And I want to tell you something. I'm just honored. I'm really honored. And I want to congratulate Ted, and I want to congratulate all of the incredible candidates, including Mike Huckabee, who's become a really good friend of mine. So congratulations to everybody. Congratulations. I want to thank all of the folks that worked with us. We had a great team, and we will continue to have a great team. And we're just so happy with the way everything worked out. And most importantly, I have to thank my wife and Laura and Eric and Vanessa and Don. They went out and they were doing speeches. And in fact, Don and Eric, I think you did about 6 speeches today. So I just want to thank my family. They have been so amazing and so supportive. And we've had every indication. We're going now on. We have a poll. We're at 28 points ahead. Okay? New Hampshire. We love New Hampshire. We love South Carolina. And we're leaving tonight. And tomorrow afternoon, we'll be in New Hampshire. And that'll be something special. It's going to be a great week. And we're going to be up here next week. And I think we're going to be proclaiming victory, I hope. I will say this. I don't know who's going to win between Bernie and Hillary. I don't know what's going to happen with Hillary. She's got other problems, maybe bigger than the problems she's got in terms of nominations.
We know what that was a hint at. Hillary's
but we've had
legal issues.
So many different indications and polls that we beat her, and we beat her easily. And we will go on to get the Republican nomination, and we will go on to easily beat Hillary or Bernie or whoever the hell they throw up there. Iowa, we love you. We thank you. You're special. We will be back many, many times. In fact, I think I might come here and buy a farm. I love it, okay? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you go. That was Trump's concession speech. About as humble as you're ever going to hear him, probably. Couple things. So he ends it with this line about, I think I might come back to Iowa and buy a farm. I know that, there's a lot of class warfare in this country, and a lot of working class people tend to resent people who are extremely wealthy like Trump, and they've overlooked that with Trump. But it's almost like when he just, when he says to these people, because anyone who knows anything about farming, and I know almost nothing about farming, but I know this, that it tends to be very hard work, and people who are farmers for a living tend to struggle. And so then you've got this super rich guy in front of you saying at a podium, maybe I'll just come back here and buy a farm. So the other thing that was interesting is, it's up until last night, I thought it was rare, at least I hadn't noticed any Republican ever really saying something like, we're going to beat whoever the Democrats nominate, whether it be Hillary or Bernie or whoever. It's usually just, we're going to beat Hillary Clinton. So kind of a subtle thing, but I know that obviously when Trump gave that speech last night, we still didn't know. When I went to sleep last night at, I think it was about 4 a.m., I didn't know yet. They hadn't announced yet officially who won the Iowa caucus. And we'll talk more about that after the break, by the way. On the Democrat side specifically, they didn't discuss who won the Iowa caucus. But, Trump, it's funny. Like I said, that was an uncharacteristically short speech for him. And, I wonder if it's just kind of, when he loses, he just doesn't want to talk a lot. It's easy for him to bloviate for, 90 minutes, 2 hours. He gives these very long speeches at these events. In fact, earlier in the Jeep, I heard that they had to cut away from it a couple times on NPR because he's here now in New Hampshire, where we broadcast from, because we have the First in the Nation primary coming right up, and next week. And he a couple times he swore, and they had to, but it's like they're not on any kind of a delay, I guess, on NPR. So he swears, and then after he already swears, the board op or whoever says, "Oh, we're listening to Donald Trump," and you got a little colorful with the language there. Just after he's already said it, sort of cutting in and sort of almost apologizing. Very, very awkward. But his concession speech was pretty quick, and he did congratulate Ted Cruz. But he was complaining when I heard him in the Jeep earlier about how the media, they're all so congratulatory in a sense toward Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio came in a strong third, and they're all talking about how that's like this huge victory for Marco Rubio, but how it was such a terrible defeat for Trump coming in second. And he does have a point there, because that does seem to be the attitude of the media, that this was a big, big victory for Rubio, showing that he is a credible establishment candidate, because that's what many in the Republican Party are looking for, an establishment candidate instead of Trump or Cruz. And he's right. That is how the media was kind of portraying it. A big victory for Rubio, and Trump, he just got stomped on last night in the caucus, where in reality, he did better than Rubio. He came in second. Well, let's talk about what happened on the Democratic side when we come back. More Unleashed. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTImes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTImes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTImes endeavor. Host your show with OMTImes Radio Network.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTImes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of the Inspired Parenting Radio Show, where every week we bring you empowering information from the diverse fields of conscious parenting, education, neuroscience, consciousness, health, and metaphysics to support you in nurturing the best in your children. So if you're interested in understanding what shapes your children's minds, spirits, and hearts, join me every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and prepare to be inspired.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live tonight on IPM Nation 1 and OTR FM. Quick programming note, by the way, of course, Wednesdays is our television day around here, and tomorrow, if you're listening live on Tuesday night, I will be once again on Ward 13 with John Hopwood tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can watch that at ipmnation.com/MPTS. And we will be chatting with the great Vermin Supreme. So Vermin Supreme was he was a guest on this show. We did a phone interview with him that Jen had booked. I think it was about a year ago now. maybe a little bit less than a year, but he will be joining us in person tomorrow on Ward 13 with John Hopwood. So that's at 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, you can watch that at ipmnation.com/MPTS. I think Joel Elber from Amsterdam might be with us too. I know that John had invited him. And then, of course, the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed immediately after that at 2 p.m. Eastern at ipmnation.com/MPTS. And we'll make sure both of those are up and available on YouTube later in the day. And, of course, for Unleashed, we'll try to get everybody to stick around. Maybe we can get Vermin Supreme to stick around for Unleashed. And, I'll offer to let him dump glitter on me or something. Of course, if he wants to dump glitter on me, he's going to anyway. I've often, if you're a regular listener, you've probably heard me tell the story before, but 4 years ago, I had attended an event it was at St. Anselm College at the Center for Politics, and it was, or I should say the Center for Politics at St. Anselm College, rather. And it was an event for non-traditional candidates or something like that, alternative candidates for president. And at that event, I got to see Vermin Supreme dump fairy dust, as he called it. It was really just glitter all over Randall Terry. And Randall Terry, for those who don't know, he's from Operation Rescue is the name of the organization or something like that. It's a pro-life group. Randall Terry kind of became infamous for going into abortion clinics and chaining himself or handcuffing himself to the bathroom sink in abortion clinics as a matter of protest. So Vermin dumped glitter all over him and proclaimed him gay, repeatedly saying, "I'm turning you gay, Randall." Randall Terry, to his credit, had a good sense of humor about it, but what else are you going to do in that situation? We're talking tonight about the Iowa caucus, of course, very exciting. The first votes cast in the 2016 presidential election. And look, a couple things, though. Now, maybe I'm biased because being in New Hampshire, of course, we're very proud of our status as the first in the nation primary. Now, we don't have quite the stature of being the first votes cast in the process of nominating candidates because that goes to Iowa. They have the first in the nation caucus. But, there's a reason why, and I'll try to be kind about it, and I don't wish to offend any Iowans who may be listening, but there are reasons why those of us in New Hampshire, and again, we may be biased because we like our first in the nation primary status, why some of us, though, look at those states that have caucuses instead of primaries with bemusement and sort of this we just kind of shake our heads. Like, it's complicated, it's strange, and you end up with, my God, you end up with things like coin tosses being involved in deciding who gets delegates or who gets that extra delegate, because Hillary and Bernie ended up getting almost the same number of delegates. Hillary got one more delegate than Bernie because they came in statistically in a tie. So it's easy for us to look. Let me put it this way, Iowa, you with this caucus, you did nothing for yourselves in terms of redeeming yourselves after the 2012 debacle with the Iowa caucus, where initially it was announced that Rick Santorum had won the Iowa caucus by a mere 8 votes. I remember coming on this show and saying, hey, if you've ever felt like your vote didn't count, remember, Rick Santorum won this Iowa caucus by only 8 votes. And then we find out, I don't know, a few weeks later, a couple months later, that, well, no, actually, Santorum might not have won after all. It might have been Ron Paul. But we're not sure. It depends on how you do the math. We can't figure it out. and then eventually it was somebody else. I forget who. It might have been Rick Perry or it might have been Romney. Or it was like, oh, no, actually, this other person might have won. But we're not sure. We just can't figure it out for certain. It's bizarre. So, again, Iowa, you did nothing to redeem yourselves last night when now there's these stories of a coin toss deciding who the winner was for the Democrats last night. Now, there's also the issue of, and we'll get back to the coin toss in a minute. There's also the question, though, of course, does the Iowa caucus even mean anything when it's such a debacle, when it's such a circus? Again, no offense, Iowa, but that's how some of us do perceive it. And again, I acknowledge my own bias being in the state with the first in the nation primary. But I mean, in 2012, it was Santorum, or at least, again, that's who was initially announced, that Rick Santorum had won the Iowa caucus. And trust me, nobody thought Rick Santorum, let me put it this way, nobody thought it meant anything. Was Rick Santorum going to be the Republican nominee? No, of course not. The guy who had just won the Iowa caucus had no chance of being the nominee. So, nor did it give him any momentum coming into New Hampshire. Then you go back to 2008. Governor Mike Huckabee won the Iowa caucus in 2008. And again, so what? Did anybody see that and go, oh my God? Well, apparently Mike Huckabee, he's a serious contender for the Republican nomination. We underestimated him. He could actually pull this off. Of course not. He won the Iowa caucus, and so what? And then it was on in New Hampshire, and it was John McCain. Right? I think McCain won the New Hampshire primary in 2008. By the way, matter of fact, here's a little statistic for you regarding Iowa. The Republican who won the Iowa caucus has not been the one to go on and be the Republican nominee since 1976. So if you look at it that way, at least for the Republicans, the Iowa caucus means absolutely nothing. It's not predictive of anything. It doesn't matter. It's just the circus that it is. Now, on the Democratic side, I did talk yesterday on the show about 2004, where the Iowa caucus actually did mean something, somewhat accidentally, but because in 2004, and we're not going to go back through the whole thing over again, but just for a quick historical context, in 2004, John Kerry won the Iowa caucus, and John Kerry was considered an underdog. Howard Dean, at the time, was the clear frontrunner. Howard Dean, who, when he initially got into the race, was considered an underdog for the Democrats. He actually became quite popular. As a matter of fact, he became popular on the same sort of liberal populism that Bernie Sanders is now enjoying. There are some similarities there. And then Howard Dean, despite his front-runner status, went on to lose the Iowa caucus, coming in third. John Kerry won the Iowa caucus. That was the night of course, the famous Dean scream, which ended up completely destroying, I think unfairly, Howard Dean's candidacy. And John Kerry, meanwhile, who had once been an underdog, rode the wave of momentum coming out of Iowa and won the New Hampshire primary and went on to become the nominee. Now, he might have, it's hard to tell, though, again, whether Iowa had anything to do with him winning New Hampshire, because he probably, some would speculate, would have won New Hampshire anyway because he had favorite son status. He's from Massachusetts, or our neighboring state. So typically, if you're a presidential candidate from Massachusetts, you're going to win New Hampshire. So, you know, in that instance for the Democrats, the 2004 Iowa caucus did seem to mean something. But for the Republicans, it clearly means nothing. So, you know, I can understand Trump maybe being a little flippant about it and being like, whatever. You know, maybe I'll come back and buy a farm. Thanks, Iowa. I'm out. And just give a very quick, probably the shortest speech he's given since he became a candidate. So they went with, you know, Iowa, of course, voted for the other candidate that the establishment doesn't like, Ted Cruz. I mean, the establishment certainly more comfortable with Ted Cruz than Donald Trump, but the establishment isn't crazy about Ted Cruz either. Not just because he, you know, does things that the establishment doesn't like calling Mitch McConnell a liar, something that I actually admire Cruz for doing. but they don't think he can beat Hillary, and I don't think he can either. I think if they nominate either Trump or Cruz, I think they lose. So then for the Democrats, it was very, very close. When I went to bed last night, it was still something like 75% of precincts had reported, and it was a statistical tie between Bernie and Hillary. So now it's been reported in the media today, throughout the day, that a coin flip actually decided who won the Iowa caucus. And when a coin flip is involved, that makes it a circus. And apparently, though, this is not that unusual. Iowa is not the only state that has a caucus instead of a primary. And apparently, Iowa is not the only state where the entire thing does sort of devolve into a circus. However, so NPR, and this is at npr.org, they put up a story, and they put up some audio too, kind of explaining this. And apparently there are some misconceptions regarding how this all worked out in terms of Hillary winning by coin flip, and it's not exactly what people think. So, but we're already running up against another break. So I'm going to play that audio for you when we come back. And I have not listened to that ahead of time. So we will learn together. We'll learn more about how Iowans do this. I'm sorry, Iowa. I'm not trying to be mean. I just really, it's just embarrassing. All right, we'll be right back. More Unleashed coming up. Stay with me.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTImes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTImes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTImes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTImes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
OMTImes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTImes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live. It's the day after the Iowa caucus 2016. And if you'd like to join the conversation tonight, you can. You can call us at 617-917-4IPM, 617-917-4476. You can call or text at that number. And, all right, I have not, like I said before, I have not listened to this yet. So we're talking about the Iowa caucus tonight. And this is some audio from NPR explaining how this whole coin flip thing really works. So let's take a listen. I have not listened to this ahead of time, so we will learn together. Here it is.
Iowa caucuses. On the Democratic side, it was the tightest race in history. It was about 4 a.m. when the state Democratic Party said Hillary Clinton would prevail by at least 2 delegates, but the haggling continued through much of the day. NPR political editor Domenico Montanaro is with us to explain what happened. And Domenico, why is this so hard? I mean, what's the problem with the tally here?
Well, hi, Kelly. First of all, we're never going to see any raw vote when it comes to the Democratic side. We know that they have 171,000 people came out to vote overall, but they don't break that out to like the way the Republicans do to say how many people actually went and voted. What they do is they have these what are called state delegate equivalents. There's a phrase for you and something that we have to talk about.
You're right. Yeah. Tell us what that means. Like, give us like the Cliff Note version.
Well, last night, Iowa Democrats elected 11,000 delegates to local conventions. That's what these 1,683 precinct caucuses were all about. Okay. They'll elect from that 1,400 state delegates later that spring. So all of those numbers that you see last night where people say, oh, Hillary Clinton won by 4 delegates, it was actually an estimate of the 1,400 state delegates and not that broader universe of 11,000.
Let me stop this for a moment. So, couple things. First of all, as someone who is terrible at math and confused by numbers, I'm already finding this hard to follow. But secondly, why? Obviously this is complicated, and the way they do this is complicated, which is why, look, I mean, I'm no genius, but I think I'm a reasonably bright guy. And yet all the times I've heard the process of this explained, I still don't get it. It has never made sense to me. And I would be curious what the rationale is for making this as complicated as it is. You know, what is the advantage of doing it this way versus a primary where you just go and you vote and then you count the votes? What could possibly be the advantage of doing it this way? I am baffled by that. I've never understood that. I don't understand it now. All right. You know what? We only got 15 seconds into the audio before I decided to interrupt it. So bear with me. I'm just going to start it over at the beginning, and I won't interrupt it again. I promise, until we get to the end. Because I actually really do want to try again to wrap my head around this, and it's just very confusing to me. All right, so I started it over. This is from NPR.
Okay, so there are also reports that this election was decided basically by a coin toss, that Hillary got 6 out of 6 coin tosses. Is this true or false?
Partially true and completely misleading.
Okay.
She did win 6 of 6 of these coin tosses that are used to break ties in places where there's an odd number of delegates. So let's say, we walk in and there's 30 people for Hillary Clinton and 30 people for Bernie Sanders, and they award 5 delegates. Well, they get 2 delegates apiece, and they have to figure out what to do with that one left over. They don't split it in half. They flip a coin. Now, she won 6 of 6 that we'd heard of through various reporters who are at various caucus sites. I spoke to the Iowa State Democratic Party earlier today, and they told me that actually there were more than a dozen of these coin tosses. That's how close this election was. And Bernie Sanders won a handful of those. So it's not true that Hillary Clinton somehow won 6 of 6 and then won the whole thing. And in fact, those 6 or those 12 coin tosses that happened were of the broader universe of 11,000, not of the 1,400.
Totally decisive moments.
That's right. So there wound up being like 10 times the effectiveness, if you think about that, where you'd have to win like 8 or 9 of those coin tosses in a row just to get 1 delegate, and she won by 4. Okay. Still a tiny whisker of a margin, though.
Right. I mean, very quickly, are we done with coin tosses at this point, or could this happen again?
Well, coin tosses are not unique to Iowa, actually. Okay. They happen in a half dozen to a dozen other places, and, we could see them in some other places if it's this tight and it comes down to the wire again.
It's Domenico Montanaro, NPR's political editor. Thanks so much for explaining it all to us.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was a little slow there. I was trying to take that all in. Yeah, no, I get it now. Now that I've heard it explained, I finally get it. I'm kidding. I am still just, I don't know what I just heard. Let's look at the article. Maybe this will explain it. Okay. So, coin toss fact check. No, coin flips did not win Iowa for Hillary Clinton. This is on NPR.com. Hillary Clinton got lucky Monday night, very lucky, but not for the reason some are alleging. Some have attributed her squeaker of a victory over Bernie Sanders, in the Iowa Democratic presidential caucuses to an improbable lucky streak of tie-breaking coin tosses. It has been reported that there were as many as 6 sites where ties were decided by the flip of a coin, and Clinton won every single one. The odds of that happening are 1 in 64, or less than 2%. What's more, that gave her just slightly more than her margin of victory over Sanders, 4 delegates. Things that make you go, indeed. Here's proof. Watch one of these coin toss tiebreakers in this video taken by Univision reporter, and then there's a video here. And the video, by the way, appears to be instructive in terms of something that actually goes on at the caucus. So I'm not going to play the video, but except that doesn't tell the whole story. In fact, there were at least a dozen tiebreakers, and Senator Sanders won at least a handful, an Iowa Democratic Party official told NPR. Gone unmentioned so far is that even if Clinton won that miracle 6 and there were no other coin tosses, it would make little difference in the outcome. That is in part because of the complicated way Iowa Democrats allocate their delegates and what was being reported on election night and what wasn't. Let's step back and explain for a second, and this is tricky, so stay with us. First, understand that the state party reported a grand total of 171,508 caucus goers, the second highest turnout in Iowa caucus history behind 2008. And no raw vote was or is ever broken out by candidate and recorded at the Democratic caucuses. That's because in Iowa, it's a delegate game. Iowa has a multi-step process for picking delegates. Monday night was just step 1. Great, here's how it works. There were 1,683 precinct caucuses on Iowa caucus night. Those precinct caucuses elected 11,065 delegates to the county conventions, which take place March 12th. That universe of, okay, let's skip down. A coin flip? Really? Yes, Iowa, and it's not alone, uses coin tosses to break ties in precincts that award an odd number of delegates. For example, let's say 5 delegates are set to be awarded in precinct 1. There are 30 people for Clinton and 30 people for Sanders, and no one on either side can be swayed. The result? Clinton and Sanders get 2 delegates apiece. What happens to the final delegate? The caucuses revert to, you guessed it, a coin toss. Does this happen often? It's pretty rare in a normal race, but this was no normal race. Clinton and Sanders were separated by a razor-thin 0.3 percentage point, or 4 state delegate equivalents, 701 for Clinton, 697 for Sanders, and 8 for Martin O'Malley. It was the closest result in 40 years of the Iowa Democratic Caucus. What about the 60 missing caucus goers and a coin flip? As NPR's Jessica Taylor reports, the Des Moines Register explained how a tie happened at 1%. After 60 registered caucus goers were missing since the initial tally, and O'Malley supporters had been redistributed, Clinton was assigned 4 delegates and Sanders got 3, but 1 remained unassigned based on the initial count. Could this happen again this year? It's pretty unlikely, but not impossible. Again, as Taylor reports, seemingly unusual tie-break methods are not new in politics. According to the National Council of State Legislatures, Wyoming uses coin tosses to break ties. Last year in Mississippi, the winner of a seat in the state legislature was determined by drawing straws? Oh, my God. It's American democracy. Well, here's an idea. How about just going by the raw totals? Why is it wrong to use raw totals? Why is it that if it's a statistical tie, you have to go to the coin I can't even say it. I'm so flustered. Coin toss. Why can't you just say, hey, Hillary got more raw votes than Sanders did. So regardless of whether it's a statistical tie or whatever, she got more of the raw votes, so we'll give it to her. But in the end, why should I care? Why should any of us care? What's it matter? The Iowa caucus doesn't matter. And, I mean, look, it really is, I mean, it's a wash anyway. She got one more delegate than he did. One more delegate. So as far as adding up delegates, and that's where it gets interesting, too, as we get further into the primary season, or primary and caucus season. Some states, every state does it differently. Some states will, whoever wins the primary gets all the delegates of that state. Other states will actually apportion them based on percentage of vote count. So that part of the process gets interesting. But the caucus thing is just, that's obnoxious. Wouldn't a primary just be easier? Of course, if Iowa ever does that, they have to pick a different date. If they do go to a primary, they can't be first anymore. I wonder if I'll have to look that up. I wonder if any states historically have gone from doing a caucus to doing a primary because they just, one day it occurred to them, God, this could be so much easier. Of course, Kentucky has gone from a primary to a caucus to accommodate Rand Paul, because in a primary, according to state law in Kentucky, he couldn't be on the ballot twice. He's running for president and he's running for re-election to the Senate. So I guess you can go from primary to caucus if it suits you. We'll finish up with something fun. Be right back. Don't go away. More Unleashed coming up.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTImes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTImes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTImes endeavor. Host your show with OMTImes Radio Network.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe, The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTImes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTImes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTImes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live on this Tuesday night, the night after the Iowa caucus. Next up is New Hampshire, the big first in the nation, New Hampshire primary. Quick programming note again before we wrap up tonight. On the television edition of Unleashed, you can see that every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern at ipmnation.com/MPTS. And tomorrow, preceding the Matt Connarton Unleashed television edition, you can watch Ward 13 with John Hopwood. I will be on with John, as I often am, and we will be chatting with Vermin Supreme, candidate for president. We'll see how Vermin does in the New Hampshire primary. I think I'm going to vote for Vermin. I'm not kidding. Vermin's been on this show before. I got to do a phone interview with him about a year ago, and I'll get to chat with him in person tomorrow on Ward 13 with John Hopwood. So that starts at 1 p.m. Eastern at ipmnation.com/MPTS, and then maybe we'll get him to stick around for Unleashed. Let's see. For our final segment tonight, there's someone I haven't talked about in a while, but someone I always enjoy discussing. Yes, here, actually, let me cue up her intro music. We have special music I always like to play when discussing this particular individual. There you go.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Yes, that can only mean one thing. My all-time favorite political satirist, former Congresswoman from Minnesota, Michelle Bachmann. And I call her a satirist because, yes, I know, everyone says, but Matt, she's completely serious. And I always say, I know that it seems that way, but I take just a tiny bit of comfort in deluding myself into believing that it's all an act, and that the great people of the state of Minnesota, the state that once elected one of my personal heroes, the great Jesse the Body Ventura, as he was known during his wrestling days, that once elected him to governor, the great state of Minnesota would not elect someone as insane as Michelle Bachmann to Congress if they didn't believe that it was all a put on. So I call her a satirist. I like to pretend that it's just some sort of weird performance art thing. But this one up today, this is on rawstory.com. Michelle Bachmann warns that Obama will take over the United Nations and then reveal that he's the Antichrist. Well, if she's right, this is terrible news. But of course, I'm sure there are some of my conservative friends listening who would certainly agree with her. Let's see. Let me read this. Michelle Bachmann is fantasizing about the apocalypse again, but it's hard to tell if she's trying to stop it or enthusiastically cheering it on. The former Republican Congresswoman appeared Saturday on the OMTImes radio program hosted by Jan Markle and Eric Barger, who she warned that the Syrian civil war was setting up the biblical battle of Armageddon. Bachmann predicted world leaders were poised to grant legitimacy to the Islamic State, and she said Russian and Iranian military intervention in Syria was establishing grounds for a future invasion of Israel to seize its energy resources in accordance with the biblical prophecy. She said, quote, I believe they are positioning themselves so that someday they could invade Israel to be able to take over the vast stores of oil and natural gas that Israel is controlling, unquote. Oh, my goodness. She said a partnership between Russia and Iran, supported by China, would match the scriptural account laid out in the book of Revelation. Bachmann then cited a dubiously sourced report to predict that President Barack Obama was seeking to enlarge and expand his power by becoming Secretary General of the United Nations. That is, assuming he doesn't cancel the November elections and remain in the White House. Bachmann said, quote, Obama would only go into an empowered, powerful UN, powerful enough to see the United States come under the UN's authority, unquote. Yeah, I know conspiracy theory people who would think that's ridiculous. Anyway, Right Wing Watch traced the claim about Obama leading the UN to a report from the right-wing Investors Business Daily, which cited a possibly non-existent report in the Kuwaiti newspaper Al Jarida, the same newspaper that falsely reported that Obama had threatened to shoot down Israeli aircraft threatening Iran's nuclear program. Nonetheless, Bachman, a frequent critic of the mainstream media, found the reporting credible enough to form the basis of a wild conspiracy theory about Obama becoming king of the world. Bachman, despite her efforts, remains disappointed that American Christians aren't as excited about the end times as Middle Eastern Muslims are, or she is. There's some audio here. We've got to. No, actually, we won't do it because it's like 8 minutes long. Actually, let's just hear a little bit of it. A little bit of this crazy woman.
Iran and Russia together are going into holding up and establishing Syria. Syria, of course, being on Israel's border. What we see, which is about to happen, I believe, with Syria, and it may have already happened by the time this show airs.
Oh, no.
The prediction is that Syria has fallen apart, quite literally, but on a political basis, they would be, quote, partitioned, in that although Russia today has control of Syria, they would be partitioning it so that the eastern portion of Syria would effectively be considered disputed occupied territory by the Islamic State. I think the world is about to give legitimacy to the Islamic State, and the Islamic State would have control over eastern Syria and also over Iraq. I don't think that Russia wants to mess with them, because what Russia wants is a statelet. They want to make sure that they can hold on to a couple of key cities. And the two cities that they want to hold on to is Aleppo and Damascus. And if they can control that eastern portion of the Mediterranean Sea so that they can have that port, that's what they're really interested in. And why is that? They are interested because of the potential offshore energy in the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, let's just briefly talk. In the last 20 years, there's been a complete change for Israel. Israel found the largest natural gas finds in the last 20 years in the Eastern Mediterranean. One site was called Tamar. The other was called Leviathan. Also reportedly in the Golan Heights, they found profound stores of shale oil in the Golan Heights. This is brand new for Israel. Totally rewrites what Israel had. The joke was always that God gave the oil to the Arab nations and Israel didn't have any. Now we find out that Israel is sitting on a gold mine of natural gas and of oil. I believe that Putin, who is dominating in Syria, will be perfectly content with carving up Syria so that he can have a control base of operations in Western Syria, so he can control the port, his military access. But also, I believe that Putin and Iran have an alliance so that they can control not only the production of global oil, but the distribution of global oil. And I believe that they are positioning themselves so that someday they could invade Israel to be able to take over the vast stores of...
Okay, I have to stop that. So there's more. If you want to hear the whole sound clip, it's at rawstory.com. But we are going to be running out of time. But I also want to comment on that. Here's how I think Michelle Bachmann fools people. She says, some people can kind of sound. It's a tactic that people can use to kind of because this isn't unique to her. Crazy. You see it all the time in politics where crazy people will say something crazy that perhaps they do it intentionally or perhaps not, but perhaps there is some deliberate sort of tactic where they realize they're saying something that you're going to think is crazy, so they give you a bunch of information that sounds completely sane and reasonable, and then the crazy thing that they're going to tell you is the punchline. But the crazy thing that they tell you, because it's propped up on all this reasonable sounding stuff somehow ends up sounding less crazy. Like if Michelle Bachmann just said, you know, I think Russia is going to invade Israel, if she just said that, and Obama will turn out to be the Antichrist and whatnot, and we didn't get to that portion of the audio, but you know, you would say Russia is going to invade Israel. That sounds crazy. Why would that happen? You know, of all the scenarios of bad things that could happen in the Middle East, Russia is going to invade Israel. But what she does is she says because a lot of what she said there sounded perfectly reasonable. She said a series of reasonable sounding things and things that reasons to be concerned about Putin's actions in Syria and whatnot. So she builds to this crescendo of, okay, and here's what I think is going to happen. Russia's going to invade Israel. But by the time she gets there, she has said all these fairly intelligent sounding, reasonable things. So it sort of softens the blow of how ridiculous the conclusion that she comes to is. So maybe Thursday night on the show, we'll play the rest of the audio so we can hear, because I am genuinely curious now, how does she ultimately get to where she manages to say, and I think Obama will turn out to be the Antichrist? What does she give us leading up to that so that she can then say that with a straight face? And maybe it is a deliberate tactic. I don't think Michelle Bachmann is stupid. I just think she's insane. A lot of smart people are crazy. A lot of crazy people are very smart. People used to compare her to Sarah Palin, but Sarah Palin is just really stupid. Michelle Bachmann is no Sarah Palin. She says crazy things, but she says them in a very articulate manner, if that makes sense. That's why I think maybe it is a put on. And I will continue to call her my favorite political satirist. We're out of time. Good night, everybody.